I have to change the background. My apologies. There we go. That's a bit better. Welcome. I hope everyone has got their cup of tea and had a wee stretch. I know I certainly did. So we are going to crack straight into it. And I have some questions here. So this is for everybody. We're just going to have a chat tonight. So please, guys, please, if you have a question, pop it in the chat for us and we will do our best to answer. So we had Michelle Hunter asked on one of the Facebook groups, I did lose track on what one, should I be worried about doing too much? We do a mixture of online workbook, hands-on practical, art, sport, and reading. Who wants to take this one? Go ahead, Erin.
Is it stressing you or your child? If it's not, no. If it's causing issues, then yeah. If you're getting burnt out, if they're getting burnt out, if it's not maybe leaving any time for just, it is useful to have boredom sometimes in a child. It creates creativity, but if that's not the case and you're coping with it and they're coping with it, then no, go for it.
Yeah, I would agree. I would just go do everything. Children don't know what they're good at until they've tried it, and also they're not very good at it when they first start. So you have to allow them to experience stuff before they go, hey, I'm really good at that, or I really enjoy it. Do everything.
Yep, I would tend to agree as well. I was basically going to say exactly the combo of what you two said. So I haven't got anything extra to add. What about you, Shirley?
I think we all go through seasons, and if you're coping in the season you're in, as Erin said, carry on. But there are some seasons where families do pare down what they're doing. There were seasons when I had babies and toddlers, and we kind of just did the minimum, and then I'd hear my homeschooling friends talking about the wonderful art appreciating program they're doing or outings that they're doing, and you kind of feel like you're missing out. But, if you look at the long game, the big picture, they're many years ahead of you, and you will be able to add other things in again in a different season if you're not coping right now. So this is the wonderful flexibility that we have. We are the best ones to judge what's best for our family in our circumstances right now.
Hey, we've actually got Danny Archer sitting backstage.
Oh, have we now?
Yeah. So
I don't see her.
Oh,
hang on. I've got too much up on my screen. There she is. Hey, Danny. Yay. She made it. Sorry, there's too many things backstage for me. I will just take a couple down if I can.
Danny, what do you think about doing everything? Did you hear the question?
I did. I'm a child who did everything. So, but I agree with what Shirley was saying in terms of it comes and goes. So there are times when, you will do lots and lots, and there'll be times where you'll just tailor it back and do a few things. And I also think it's family dependent. Every family is different. Every child's different.
Yeah, I agree. I remember when I was having babies, literally for a good 6 months plus, at least sort of the last 3 months of a pregnancy and the first 3 months of a newborn, we didn't do a whole heap other than like read and basic math. And my kids are okay. And my big kids went through that multiple times. I have 8 children. So they went through multiple seasons of mum's not capable of all the things. And they turned out pretty okay.
I just add another thought too, that some of us with large families didn't give the same opportunities to the younger children as the older children, or the younger children got new opportunities than the older children. Maybe the family finances were at different places in different seasons. Some of my kids did music lessons, then something happened and the others didn't. And I've just said to the younger ones, if you want to learn music one day, don't think that you're going to be too old. I've got a friend in her 50s who started a musical instrument, and she mastered it, and she started performing publicly with her teacher doing weddings and events. So it's never too late to learn. And we don't have to feel guilty if our children don't all get the exact same opportunities and the exact same kind of education. It definitely changes. I think we all start out much more strict and rigid with our first one or two, and we become more relaxed and confident and flexible with our younger ones as we mature. So it changes.
All right. You know what? I've got another good question that's a very good lead into this one, actually. What do you do on a rough day? Do you just write it off or do you push through? How do you know what to do?
I'll jump in first. It depends what kind of rough it is. If it's relationship issues in the family, you push through because that becomes the lesson. Sometimes you've got to deal with an attitude before you can deal with the academics. And you've got to train children to, not complain or not be mean to their sibling or share the pencil sharpener or whatever the issue is. But sometimes it's just outside things. I had a week last week where suddenly there was disruption in the house and some of my kids were helping with painting. And I was feeling frustrated because I can't tick off my list of things I wanted to get done. And then I realized, but they're learning those skills. Those skills don't come out of a textbook. So they are learning. And for me, it was a rough day because I felt like I'm not doing what I had on my agenda. But I just let it go because I knew it's actually valuable stuff anyway. And I just had to reset my thinking because we tend to have the schoolish mindset that academics is the goal, But actually, life is so much more than just academics. You go next, Erin.
Yeah, and do you know what? I'm so pleased you went first because I was thinking about this one last night. Krystel had prepped us with this question, and I'd forgotten about including about relationship thing. I totally agree. There are times when you should push through. If you are going to, let your kids get away with something that is unacceptable in your family all the time, then you're not teaching them the lesson that is unacceptable. But if we're talking a rough day, everyone's tired and grumpy, or some of the people are tired and grumpy, and it's just not working, and pushing through that maths problem with that handwriting is causing more damage than the learning that they would get by doing it, by just complete that sentence, child, then or whatever it is, then depending on the age of your kids, put it aside and, assuming they are between 0 and sort of 12 or 13, depends on what they like. But I would get the Lego out, dump the Lego out, put on an audiobook, or put on, my go-to was BBC David Attenborough's Planet Earth because they enjoyed it. So it was TV time, but I kind of felt like they were getting something more educational out of it. Do you know, if you play that enough and you've got babies and toddlers, they start to mimic a really gorgeous English accent in a David Attenborough voice. Is that a useful skill for the rest of their life? Not really, but it was very funny in our family. So audiobook or just, let them go outside and play, run around outside, go do some laps of the driveway. Keep the relationship happy and keep the schoolwork, put the workbook aside and do something else. And if there's play, that's play. If everyone needs a nap, go do that. Mum needs a wine while everyone's having a nap, have that. But yeah, put it aside, have, and if it's happening too often, then look at what's causing it. What is the issue? Is it a curriculum that's just not working for you and your family? Or is it a method? Is it the time of day? Is it a bad attitude from, leaking through from you because you're stressed about a particular thing, or is it they don't want to do that particular thing? And is this something that you need to compromise on, or is it a stickler, or should you let it go? So, yeah. Anyone else?
Danny?
Yeah. Go on, Danny.
I was going to say I could come at it more from like a learning needs point of view, because I'm working with students where there's often rough days. I've got they've got a lot of different things going on in their lives, and it is, you just need to change tact. sometimes. And I like what Erin said, is at the time of day, like if I've got a student as an example, just was not coping in the lesson, could not stay focused, and we were just not fighting, but we just kind of pushed through all the time, switched up that lesson time to the very first thing in the morning, and it's a completely different child. So I guess, is it a day, or is it a rough day? Is there external influences? Maybe they've had a big weekend or something, or is it something consistently happening, and what little tweaks can you make to kind of make that situation or make it easier for the child?
That's beautiful. That actually reminds me, Danny, we actually figured that out quite early on in my family. So my whole family are academic in the morning. If we don't get, I say bookwork, so if we don't get our set curriculum, and it's generally maths and English for everyone listening, if my kids don't do that prior to lunch, most of the time it doesn't actually ever end up happening. And that's just the way my family rolls. They are much better at the sit-down, focused academic work in the morning than they are in the afternoon. Just it is what it is. On rough days, we generally call it quits in our family. If like other people have said, if it's the family having a rough day, maybe Mum's been really busy and the family haven't connected enough, and we literally just need to actually reconnect, whether that's cuddling up on the couch watching a movie, playing a game outside together, playing a board game. We need some family reconnection time, and learning isn't going to happen unless that happens first. If it's an individual child, I've got strategies for each child that I've figured out what works as we've kind of gone along. I've got one child that I will kick him out the door for a run. That's generally his reset. One of my other kids, I will go read your book for 10 minutes and then come back. Another one plays brass. So different things for different kids. We'll just give them that reset. So as a mum, the more time, beauty of homeschooling, you actually get to know your kids really well because you spend that time with them. Nikki, you got anything to add?
No, that age thing is a really important one. I do believe that children have to learn that they're going to have, it's a practiced skill being able to concentrate, but you have to know as a parent and a teacher when to cut your losses. And see if there is a different way of doing something. So if they happen to be learning about something, it might be that you can actually talk about it while you go for a walk. It doesn't have to be in a book. You might be able to do, particularly even for older children, if they're having a really bad day, particularly girls when they're hormonal, it might be that there is a film that you can put on where you can discuss the issues that you would have been discussing in the book. And it just goes in at a different way, and you're going, oh, well, we're not doing schoolwork. You can become a master of disguising the work, but you have to know where it is they're going, because if every day is a bad day, like Erin was saying, I'd be looking at the curriculum. I'd be looking and going, is your heart really in this? Especially if they're a little bit older and they're sort of going, I'm trying to get to university, but I really just don't want to be doing that amount of work, or whatever it happens to be. Replan, spend a day, work out and go, look, and come alongside them. I hate that term, but it's like, come alongside them, go, I am on your side. I want you to have the best of what education can offer for you, but maybe we need to scale back what you are doing, or maybe we need to take an extra year to take the exams or things like that, because your mental health or your physical health is just not worth the stress that you are going through.
Yeah, I love that. All right. Hopefully that answers that question. All right, I have another one here. Eleanor asks, I would love some advice on how to teach a kid who wants to do all her learning independently, i.e. she does not want her mum teaching her, but actually she really does need a lot of help. Anyone had a child like that?
I haven't had a child like that, but I will say I know lots of people who have had children like that, and It's a difficult one because we want them to be independent. We want them to have those skills. However, they don't have the understanding of where the bar is. And the bar, we've all agreed, it can be different heights for things. And it's very difficult if you keep allowing your child to do that and mark their own work or however they want to do it, to then show them where the bar is, because the people that I know that have done that have absolutely freaked out because they've realized that they are going to miss the exams or by a long way, or they're going to have problems, and then they're cross with themselves. And once they get in that position, it's very, very difficult to sort of come together as a family again. What I would do about it, I don't know. It just depends on the child. So I know there are people out there. I can't offer an awful lot of advice in that case.
Erin, have you had a kid like that at all? You're on mute, Erin.
Yeah, teenagers again. A child that wants to work independently, but mum, dad doesn't think they're quite capable of it all the time, need more input.
Yeah, essentially.
Yeah, I guess if we're talking, actually at any age, if that's really, really causing an issue and you aren't able or don't want to kind of put your foot down and say, nope, that's not going to happen because it's causing issues with their learning, I think at that point maybe you're going to need to compromise, and how old they are will matter how much you compromise there. Find some things where you think they can work independently on that, or that it doesn't matter quite so much how involved you are, and go, right, for these things, yes, but for these subjects or for this, I need to be involved. So let's figure out how much you get to do on your own. That's the kind of conversation that really is more an older kid, though. You got a 6 or 7-year-old?
Sorry, I just had a thought. One thing I used to say all the time to my kids was, I have to sign a piece of paper to say that I school as regularly and as well as that. And I used to throw the legal side at them, and that's what I would do. And they soon learned that, I think that's what I would do.
That's going to work with a lot of kids, actually. I'm really sorry, darling. But the government's telling me I have to be involved and I have to do this. Blame someone else. Let them blame someone else. You might not want to pick the government, but, pick someone. The Ministry of Education. Pick the Minister of Education at the moment. She says that I have to. I wish, but you can do this and this, and I will check in and help you with that and that. And of course, again, depending on their age, maybe it's just a particular subject or one or two subjects. Do you know, I homeschooled, but there is absolutely no way, I realized very, very quickly, I could not teach my children music. They had this idea that I could not. Now, I'm not great at the piano, but I know the basics. And my plan was teach them the basics and then I'll pay for some piano tutoring. Nope. They had this idea that I couldn't play the piano, and they had absolutely no intention of learning from me. And I realized I couldn't do it. They would not learn the piano from me. Every other subject under the sun, I was allowed to teach them, but they never allowed me to teach that. So I just had to give up and not teach them that. So I'm not quite sure what I would do if they're not, I don't know where it came from, but they just had this idea I couldn't teach them piano, and I kind of ended up having to roll with it. I'm not sure I was that helpful, but yeah.
Kids will be kids.
I'll just chip in with my thoughts. Yes. I think when children are wanting to work independently, that's a good sign. But everything about home education can be negotiated. And I think sometimes we need to say to our children, okay, what is your goal? And I, as your mom, as Erin has said, I have to hold you accountable to achieve your goals. And I think sometimes we've got to give them enough rope to hang themselves and discover, okay, I am not good at time management, or I am not good at whatever. I am bad at procrastination. And let them discover their own strengths and their own weaknesses. Because if we're always propping them up with crutches and giving them the training wheels, they aren't going to launch off and ride on their own eventually. And so I think it's good. It's always about relationship. Respect that the child wants to try and work independently, but then show them where they're falling short. And then they have to be humble enough to accept, okay, I need mum to check my work every day or every week or whatever it is that you then need to do. Let them come to the realization themselves and that you do have their best interest at heart. But, you know, they're not quite hitting the mark yet. And you know, we also geared, well, I certainly am from my own upbringing, we all geared to succeed, and getting things wrong and making mistakes is to be avoided. But some of the best lessons in life are learned when we make mistakes, because if we get everything right, we're not learning anything new. We only learn when we've done something wrong. I don't know if that's the right word. So it's also just a change of our own mindsets.
So I would just add, yeah, if we're talking a teenager here, especially, what Shirley said, let them have the rope and then hang themselves on it. It's a terrible statement.
Yeah, okay.
Don't go, well, I want to see you working every day, because most teenagers have this, a lot of them are going to have this idea, if this is their issue of, well, I want the ability to do it when I want. They might, you're not going to give them a whole month to learn this either. But, if you're I want to see this work done every day, and they want to try out not working this day or only working for, this subject, let them have a week or two. In the grand scheme of things, it's a really short amount of time, but they set it so when they break it, they can't go, that's just because you set the goal, so I wasn't really paying attention to it. If they've set the goal and said, yeah, this is the goal that I'm setting, and we're all agreeing to it and we've written it down, then when they fail, you're just like, oh no, you didn't keep it. So now this was the consequence that we agreed on, that we'd move back to every day checking or every 2 days checking or whatever it is. So set it down on paper, because they're teenagers, and let them agree to it and write it, and then hold them to it. And of course, if they tick it off, then Shirley's right. That's a great thing.
Yeah. Consequences are great teachers as well. I've had various kids that, didn't complete the maths book by the end of the term or the end of the year. And so we just went through the holidays for a couple of days, and then they suddenly worked really fast and, completed what was required, but it was on them. And that lesson of procrastination was learned,
Yep. I've actually had this in my family. I have had one of my sons basically turned around and said, Mum, I don't like teaching me math. I was like, cheers, mate. That's great. But anyway, our solution was he learned via video. So there was, we happen to use Matthew C, so that has video instruction. He just didn't like my style. My style of teaching didn't suit his style of learning. Not my fault, not his fault. It just was. But we compromised. So I said, I still need to know what you're learning, and I still need to be checking up on you. So I'm like, how about we watch the videos together? That way I know exactly what he's learning and where he's at. So we did that. And he wanted to mark his own work. I said, sweet, that's fine, but I need to do the end of week test. So I still need to be seeing your work and checking in on that once a week. So that was our solution. And it worked actually really well. And I have one other one as well that I've implemented with my kids. So we do, what's it called? We do record books. So Sarah McKenzie of Read Aloud Revival talks about this on her YouTube channel and her podcast. Essentially what it is, Americans call them spiral notebooks. We've got 1B5 books here in New Zealand. You have a 1B5 book each with your children, split each double page spread I split it into 6, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and extras. So my kids, I set them goals, so term goals essentially, and we agree on that together. And then they are in charge. Okay, this is my 13 and 14-year-old too. So my older teens, well, No, young teens. And they're in charge of their week. So they know it's agreed upon with me how much they need to get done by the end of the term and how much I expect of them throughout the week, but they're in charge of when they do it. So if they want to do all their math on one day, they can, but they still then have to do a whole day of getting the English done or a whole day of whatever is on their list. We put sports on their list, music practice, everything goes on that record of learning. So they now fill it out. They decide their timetable as long as it fits in with the rest of the family as well. And that has given my kids independence in their learning and their day and how their day is structured. But I've still got that written record. I look at them once a week as well. So it's this constant checking in process. So that's another way, another option as well. Danny, have you got anything to add?
I'm just taking notes mentally, going, all these are all great. Because I was just thinking, I've got a 2-year-old who wants to do everything by themselves at the moment. So,
oh, the glory 2-year-olds. Yeah, I've got a very independent one.
So sometimes you get what people call the strong-willed child. And a good tip I was given is to give that child a choice. And to say to them, do you want to do your maths first or do you want to do English or something? So that they actually feel they have control and they're not constantly being told by you what to do and when to do it. You give them options. So there's boundaries, but they can choose. It works pretty well.
And I would add, I mean, that advice has been around a long time for toddlers, but there's another really key thing. Our 13-year-olds are 3. Like, you use some of those really good toddler tips and you change them very slightly, but you can use those with your teenagers. They've got the same rush of hormones going through them and growth spurts and all of that. And sometimes it's what the teenagers need too. No, it's going to have to be this way, but you can do it this way or this way.
Yeah, and I would say that canalization is something I've used all the time. It's like, what instrument would you like to play? Not playing an instrument is not an option. You're only presenting them, you say, with that. So you can be very clever with your wording, which works really well for young children and teenagers. You know, teachers tend to be masters of that. It's like, we're doing, what are we starting with? We're starting with this or this or this. They're not starting with option anything else. And that's something, we use a lot in teaching. Danny?
Well, Danny's been taking notes.
I just meant in the teaching. Did you use that an awful lot, or is it maybe my 11 to 18?
No, I think I just maybe used it without realizing I'm using it. I do know in my lessons at the moment, I use that's not an option quite a lot. Comes out of my mouth. No, that's not an option right now. So which one? Like, what are we going to do? So, yeah.
Over the years, I've also had a number of emails sent by mothers with an 11 or 12-year-old who just starts digging in their heels and they're just resistant and they're reluctant to do like anything academic. And there's just, the relationship's not good. There's tears and there's drama. And then they sort of throw their hands up and the mum's in despair. What must I do? And a veteran homeschool dad gave such good advice that I've seen and heard worked so well. And it's basically just leave the child. Make sure that they still have to do their chores in the home and responsibilities and a few minimum things, but academically give them the freedom to do whatever they want. So it's basically the deschooling kind of process. Don't let them just get into gaming. Don't let them just veg on the couch watching rubbish on YouTube. Let them actually get bored. And sometimes they just need that season at puberty to find something that they actually want to do. And this man told the story of a youngster who came out of the high school system and was like that. And his parents just gave him 2 years to basically unschool. And he started growing vegetables. And then he realized that permaculture, where you use, have chickens and you use their droppings, was a good idea. And then he got into breeding chickens. And then during his high school year, he started doing correspondence learning. And from breeding chickens and selling them and selling their eggs, he decided he wanted to go into farming. And that's what he ended up doing. So it was actually an amazing testimony. But most of us feel terrified to just leave our kids alone at that age for a year or two to figure out what they want to do. And another story was of a homeschooling mother who had done very flexible learning until about 10, 11. And then her boys she just let go the reins. And she said, we are now unschooling. And she said for 2 years, they actually did just play computer games. And then they all decided, she had twins and an older one who had some learning issues. So they were kind of all three on the same level. And all three decided in their teen years that they wanted to do Cambridge. And they did. And they passed the exams with flying colors. It was the first time they'd ever written exams in their home education careers. But she had given them the time to find the motivation to do something that they wanted to do. And all three went to university, studied in completely different fields, one in engineering, one in healthcare, and one did something else, psychology or something. But they all were top students at university. And it's just so interesting because I wouldn't feel comfortable with my kids gaming nonstop for 2 years and not doing any schooling. But sometimes you do just have to take a different approach if what you have been doing is just not working with your child. You know, that's what's the definition of insanity, is doing the same thing over and expecting a different result. So that's quite radical strategies to use. But I think it's about giving the children time to find their own motivation. And that's the lesson that I got out of it.
Yeah, I know somebody who did that, but it never came right. And they worked on a supermarket checkout. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but they were despondent because they had no qualifications and they had no way forward. So it does not always work out, just so that people know, you know, you can have, for some children, yeah, absolutely it can work. And for some children, it just doesn't, because, you know, they were allowed to do that for 4 years and realised they had very low maths and English skills and no chance at that point, because this person was pregnant, of getting any further with their education. So, and I think that's really difficult for parents, because you don't know what your child is going to do. You don't know whether they're going to go click and into something fantastic, or if they're just going to turn the other way and go, this is terrible. And the worst of it is, this particular person blamed their parents. So, you know,
I think a good compromise would be to say to the child, well, you know, in this world, to get any kind of certificate, you generally have to have maths and languages and a few other subjects. So how about in the season where you are so reluctant, we agree that you will do, say, half an hour of maths and half an hour of English a day. And it kind of sets some minimums and some boundaries so that, as you say, you're not completely neglecting everything. And that could be negotiated. And then other tasks or chores, or maybe they're things that they do want to do. But I would sort of try and give them some minimums, not just nothing.
I mean, it's been really fantastic, but being able to present people with options, because I knew NCEA was an option and Cambridge was an option, but a GED and SATs only came on my radar fairly recently, because I didn't know anybody. Even though I'm in Christchurch and we're a huge homeschooling community here, I simply did not know anybody that had taken it. So, you know, talking to people out there, you need to be aware of what they're at, you know, what the options are, so that your child, if they're not a Cambridge person, because not everybody is, you can go, well, maybe that's not going to work for you. And maybe NCEA, because they don't want to do Takura, is an option. But you know what? We can do GED and SATs. We can do this, and they will be, you know, you can present them with options, because that's what it's all about. We all want our kids to succeed in life, and to be able to do that, they just need options. And as a child, it's very difficult if you don't know what your options are. Okay, so part of the reason for all of these 3 days is to go, hey, look, here are some options. Go and explore, go and connect with Shirley, you know, and do that, to give options to people, so that if your child is one of those children who is struggling with reading, just not plugging the study note, but I'm just going to go and talk to somebody like Danny and going, look, there are options out here. We can do this. Okay. And obviously Krystel mentioned other ways of, you know, through ACE and through different things. There are ways that you can pivot, and it's never too late to change.
Absolutely.
And I'd like to add on to that. Sometimes it's really hard, especially if it's a first child. But because, like Shirley said, you tend to soften a bit with your younger children. But sometimes it's about letting go of your expectations, because your child wants to do something or is really suited to, or wants to give something a try that is not what you really had in mind for them. I'm a bookworm. I'm academic. I trained as a teacher. I kind of started out with my kids can be anything they want, so long as they've gone to university first. Turns out not all my kids wanted to go to university, but there's also one, like, I've got 2 boys who want to work with their hands. They want to be doing things. And I had high hopes that maybe that meant that they would do engineering and get an engineering degree and then work with their hands. But no, they really, really want to do one mechanics and the other one's looking at mechanics and carpentry. And that's what they really want to do. And it makes them happy. And there are other things that make me happy and kind of go, you know what, I can let go of the university, and they may still go there. The oldest is 19. He might go in 5 years' time and do a degree, or he might never do that. And to be honest, the type of mechanics he's doing, he'll probably earn more than I ever did with my degree. But he will discuss politics, and that's a big thing in my family. We love to discuss politics and whatever's on the news. He can name countries in the world. And for me, it's just something that I really wanted my kids to do. And he doesn't mind listening to stories. He's not a bookworm, which I wanted all my kids to be, but he will listen to them and he can discuss them and he can talk about them. And he can cook and he can run the house. I left home and went to university and then married young with a grand total of like 3 things that I could make in the kitchen. I think that's a really major failing. I could clean my clothes, but I didn't really have any of those household skills that you'd think that anyone should have. These are things that I sometimes just have to remind myself. My kids can all cook really well, and they can run a household, and they can catch the bus, and they can answer the phone. They do their own appointments. They go off to interviews on their own without me needing to help them out. Does it really matter if they didn't go and get a degree, when actually if the aim was to get a good job where they're going to earn more money? He's got a good job and he will be earning more money too. And he can still go there. So there's some expectations I had to let go, because they have different interests and strengths and desires for their life than I had for them. That's okay.
I think that's a real generation thing, Erin. I know when I was in school, university was pushed. Really, really, really pushed. You weren't anything unless you could go to uni. It was, and this is wrong. This is not the viewpoint, but what we were essentially pushed on us was, if you don't get that qualification, if you don't go to uni, you're not going to get a good job and you're not going to be able to support your family. And that, it was a really bad mindset, to be perfectly honest. And the world is such a different place now than when we were at school. The education has changed so much, so many more options are available to our kids now, in the way that they can study. The internet, has literally blown up what we can study now. It's not just what's available in New Zealand. We can take online courses anywhere in the world. It's just huge. So it's so different. We do have a question. Sorry, who was that?
I was just going to chip in on that note and say, our whole system is geared that children finish their schooling and then they must know what they're going to do next on that educational path. And some of us need a few more years. I didn't know what I wanted to do really. I knew what I was good at. And I've seen children also that finish their home education. And some of the lucky ones who know they want to do mechanics, or they want to do, become a paramedic or whatever it is. But some just know I'm good at IT and I kind of like doing this, but I don't really know what I want to study and what kind of job and career I need to do. And some of my adult children have had 2 or even 3 gap years where they did other work, au paired, were overseas, traveled, worked in my business at home, or just had sort of time out before they made up their mind about what they wanted to study, if they wanted to even go to uni. And I just want to put that out there for parents who have a child like that, who's not sure what they want to do, and they're reaching the end of high school. And we as parents do feel a little bit anxious. We want to know that there's a plan and a path and they're going to succeed. But sometimes we just do have to give them a year or 2, make them go and work or get some experience, discover what they do like or what they don't like. Even doing something and then deciding it's not for you is not a mistake. It's a learning opportunity. And we've got to let them have these other experiences, not just pursue academics because it's what everybody pushes. There was a great quote, and I wish I could find it now, but it's too short notice, by the late Ken Robinson. And he explained how the whole academic system is run by the professors at the top who followed this academic pathway through the school system and the university system, and they've risen to the top point in that sphere. But not all of our children are suited to go into that sphere of life. And yet we still are conditioned by the academics in society. And, he just pointed out that the system is biased. And we need to sometimes realize that there are these other pathways and other pathways to success. And we don't all measure success in academic terms. We all can measure success by whatever is important to us. For some, it might be money. For others, it might be security. For others, it might be happy relationships and families. Our values are not all the same, and we need to recognize that.
Yeah. And I'd like to say, but sort of following on from that, university is expensive. So I know, my age group, we've got kids at university, and I'm hearing from so many people that their child started a degree and quit after a year or a year and a half, by which time they've got debt, because they realized that it wasn't what they wanted. So I would also say, don't rush them into uni. My daughter has just finished her 2nd year, and she was saying all of her friends are older because they've all had to do jobs to get money to be able to go to university. So when I went to university, everybody was 18, but that seems to have shifted. And again, I've got a couple of people who I know that work at University of Canterbury, and they were saying that the undergrads are getting older. Because the parents can't afford to put them through, and they're expecting them to go out for a few years to earn the money to be able to go and get the degree. But how hard it must be as a parent if you've actually funded your child to go to university for a start, because that first year is no longer free, and then they pull the plug and they've got the debt. So I think it's about knowing yourself and knowing your skills and sort of going, is it right, rather than just being on that conveyor belt, which we all agree. And as a teacher, I was 11 to 18. I was as guilty as everybody else. They were on that conveyor belt, and my job was to get them to university. That was what we were told by the schools in the UK. Okay, it was not necessarily for them to go and do something vocational. It was, we are measured by the government on our success and how many people have basically got the equivalent of UE. And what I'm being told as well by parents now is that some children are being stopped from taking exams because it shows up on the tables that the government sees, and they're actually being stopped from actually taking those exams, and they're gatekeepers to allowing them to actually progress through.
I was listening to a podcast just the other day that was saying that was in America, though, that the lower academic kids weren't allowed to take the exam because it would lower the overall score of the school. I was quite horrified that was happening. And it was happening on the opposite end, where the kids that were the academic kids that would score really well, who didn't want to sit the exams, were being forced to, essentially, or highly encouraged to up the school's mark. And anyway, we're going to get up topic if we go on that one. Okay, we do have one here. I don't know if anyone can answer this one here. Would anyone have any experience or knowledge of the learning with I don't know how to pronounce her name. I'm really sorry. At Functional Education. Now, she was at the Homeschool Expo conference because I did meet her. I can say she's really lovely. Anyone know who here?
I've just done a quick rehash. I had learnt about it slightly a long time, not that long ago, but, long enough that I'd forgotten. So I've just been looking it up. The short answer is no. I don't have experience with functional education. It's another tool that you can use for your homeschooling. So if there is a class that she is teaching that you want to enroll your children in, then she's got the videos. She's doing the teaching in the videos. They're pre-recorded and they work their way through the videos and they will learn on that topic. It's another method of online teaching, which is something I do as well. So that works. If you are handing your entire education of your child and the responsibility of their education over to someone else entirely, that can be problematic. And in terms of functional education, that's a lot of online screen time where your child is just learning, working through those videos. So it's just something, it's like any tool. How much of this are you going to use? How good is it going to be for my child? Am I going to, are they going to be doing stuff that's not just online? Are you going to get them to be also working in a workbook or doing practical activities and all of those things? I'm not a huge advocate of workbooks. I'm also not a huge advocate of everything being online. There has to be a mix of all of them. They need to be working with their hands and doing practical stuff. They don't need to. My personal thing is that they actually should be doing some work with computers and online from a certain age because that is the age we live in. But I would say, you don't need to. Certainly not in the primary school years. If that's something that as a family you want to do away with all digital devices, sure. There are some really good things online. There's, whether it's typing, learning to type, or whether it's taking a class, they're very, very different. But they still need to know how to handwrite. We're not in such a digital age that we don't write things with our hands and, operating a pen. I just had to take a whole lot of notes last night and I realized how much I'm not used to writing for more than, writing notes, sure. Writing for 5 minutes maximum is all I've actually done. And so suddenly writing for 40 minutes because I had to write my notes out, I went, oh, my hand is tired. I would not be able to sit in a written exam anymore where I write for 3 hours. I got cramp. Those are things that, those are skills that we still want our kids to be able to do, is be able to do work in a book and online and practical activities, whether and getting outside and doing stuff. So it's a tool just like any other curriculum and resource. Have a look and see whether it suits.
And I will just say as well, having heard some stories, this has nothing to do with functional education. Can you take that question off the screen?
Yeah, I will.
Obviously, there are online providers for Cambridge. There are people like Crimson Education, things like that. And I will just say, before anybody parts with any amount of money, particularly when it's a large amount of money, make sure you know what you're getting. And that, I think, we'd all agree with. It doesn't matter whether you're paying for a tutor or, going for an online school or whatever. Know exactly what it is, because some people have paid a fortune per year for stuff that they could have had for free or for very little cost. So just make sure you know, and also talk to other people who have used these people. And again, that's nothing to do with them. This is to do with online schools and things like that. Make sure you know exactly what you're getting for your money. I'm very tight. I don't like people paying money for things that it's just not worth it. And that is not against the providers. I am just saying, know what you're paying for.
I agree. Yeah. All right. Well, we have a few minutes left, and I have probably a pretty good question to end on, to be fair, I reckon, anyway. And this one came from Nikki. But what is the one thing you want parents, so us 5, that you want parents to know about homeschooling in the teen years? Oh, hang on. We do actually have one more question. And think about that one while we answer this one, because we do have a few minutes.
Could you slowly add Cambridge into the curriculum from age 11 and slowly chip away at it? There is no chipping away at it. You're probably already doing a lot of the things anyway, whether or not you're using a Cambridge book, because it's maths and it's English and it's science. But you can you throw in things and keep it wide, like history and geography and art and music and PE and sort of everything. But if you're going to do that, have a look at the IGCSE papers, because they're the papers that most children sit when they're 16, so you can see where you are heading. Okay, it's as simple as that. Just have a look. They're free online. Have a look at the maths paper. You could even have a go at it if you wanted to. Or if you've got a really sparky maths kid, get them to sit the core paper for maths. There are 2 of them, paper 1 and paper 3, and have a go. And then you can sort of feel if they're in sort of the right sort of place. Because remember, that would be an exam that they would take when they're 16. Or have a look at the English papers and just sort of see, because a lot of people, there's some myths around Cambridge, like you have to write in full sentences and be beautifully grammatically correct for all of your subjects. And if you look at the papers, you'll see that isn't necessarily the case. So jump on the Facebook group and ask questions, because that's, yes, absolutely. But no, you don't have to come to Cambridge at age 11. I think it's better if you do, but you don't have to.
Thank you, Nikki. All right, so do we want to tackle this? One thing you want parents to know about homeschooling in the teen years. Shirley, you've probably got the most experience. Oh, no, Shirley and Nikki. Oh, no, actually, no. I'm probably the most least experienced here.
Hello?
1 through. Got 2 currently.
Shirley.
Okay, I'll jump in first. I'll probably think of other things later. I think something I often tell home educating parents is there's no deadlines in life. So we don't have to keep up with anybody else's timeline for finishing high school, for finishing any particular grade. You actually just need to know each child. And even in a family, one child may choose one pathway to getting their NCEA, the other may choose GED or Cambridge or whatever. And that's okay. And, it's about doing what suits the child and recognizing who they are and giving them a say in their education. Always discuss with them which pathway they think they're most likely to want to follow to open the doors that they think they may want to go through one day. So, yeah, I think relationship is more important than trying to keep up with school or an ideal that you have in your own mind.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, Shirley, pretty much wholeheartedly. I would just add as well, as a parent, it could be quite terrifying as they get older, because suddenly they've caught up with you, with your knowledge. I'm thinking about my physics knowledge, which is like really small, things like that. And you don't have to have all the answers. Okay, there are great books and videos and people to ask and a tutor when you really, really get stuck. And your child, if you've done it well, will know how to learn. And they can come to you when they're stuck, and you can go, we can do insert list of things here to get you through. So, if you've done a good job, they will probably surpass your knowledge in a lot of areas. And that is not a terrifying thing. That is just a natural part of it. So just embrace it. And that's why it's about building community online, because you may find you are the only person doing your pathway, whether it's SAT, GED, Cambridge, to current, whatever it happens to be. You might be the only one in your social circle of homeschoolers doing that. And it can be lonely, and you need people online to go to when you get stuck. But it's okay. You will get through. We did.
Yeah, I was going to add or fold back to what we were talking about last night, and that success looks different for every child. So not looking at like, this is where they have to be, but this is where my child is now, and then let's aim for here. And so just know that everyone learns in their own timeline, I guess is the way to put it. Yeah.
And I'd like to add, there's a question in the exemption that often really annoys a lot of people and in some ways a bit pointless if you're doing an exemption for homeschooling with a 5 or 6 year old. It's that long-term plan one. What do you see? How do you see, your child when they leave school, 15, 16, 17? I actually think that's a really handy thing to revisit when they're a young teenager or middle teenager. Not because you have to do it for an exemption and you've got to write it for the Ministry of Education, just for you and your family, you and your partner, and then also involve your teenager. But you personally, what are the things that you want them to be like and have done or know or be able to do at 18 or whatever age you want to pick? And some of the things I wrote in the exemption for my kids still hold true. I wanted them to have a passion for learning, like Nikki said. Turns out they have a passion for learning things that I don't care about sometimes, but they do actually have a passion for learning. They're not, they're not passionless when it comes to learning, and, they like educating themselves, just they want to do it on tools or something. Some of them. I also have one at university and all sorts. So, but there's more things that I realized were important, which I've already said before. I want them to be able to look after themselves and other people. I want them to have a heart for caring about people, and the environment is an important thing, was an important thing when I wrote the exemption, and it still is. I want them to be kind. I want them to know how to work. I want them to not smell. You can go for as specific and ridiculous if you like. I want not that any of my children. Well, but I have teenage boys who, honestly, the amount of time that you have to spend reminding them to use deodorant when they turn like 12 and 13. Wow. There's small. Yeah, I want them to have good personal hygiene. I want them to care about people. I want them to have good social skills. I want them to be able to cook and clean and know how to do those things and function in the world. And I want them to know about the world and care about it. Like, I want my kids to want to travel, because I didn't when I left school. I went to university and then got married young. And I wish I'd taken a year out and gone traveling, like many people and my teachers said I should do. And I was like, no, I don't want to get left behind at university, which is not a thing. So I want, those are the goals that I have for my kids. So what I want people to know about homeschooling their teenagers, maybe write some goals and realize that some of the things that you keep thinking about in terms of academics are just a small part of the puzzle of growing this child into a fully formed adult. So,
yeah, I so can relate to pretty much everything you've said there, Erin. I know there is a really amazing list. I think it was either you or it was Cynthia Hancock made of non-academic things that you want your teenager to learn at 18. And I'm pretty sure I've screen saved it, so I'll see if I can type it out. It's been on my to-do list to do a blog.
I know I have written one. I was trying to find it for yesterday's talk and I couldn't. So
yeah, but it's important to think about those things, because academics, while it is pushed, is really a small part of getting our teenagers to be functioning adults, and that really is the end goal in all of this. But I guess what I can add to this is a bit of a personal story of my eldest again at 19. So you, as parents, you cannot teach your kids everything. You cannot cram those brains with every single little piece of information that these kids need to know. But what is important is that they know how to learn. We don't need to teach them everything, but we do need to teach them how they learn as individuals, because we all learn differently. And my son had never done trigonometry. We did Matthew C, which teaches as a mastery course, and you do a subject per year. And he never got up to trig. It just he didn't need that higher level math. It just wasn't his forte. He's good at it, but he didn't need it. Anyway, but he did need it when he decided to do his building apprenticeship. And his boss said to him, he said, have you ever done trig? And he's like, no, but give me 3 weeks. And he came home and he's like, Mum, I need to learn trig. And I'm like, sweet, lucky your parents own a curriculum store. What one do we need? This one. And I pulled the relevant book off the shelf, and it was at about a year 10, year 11 level, but that's all he needed for this. And he literally studied 2 years of trig in 3 weeks. He just read the relevant chapters of the relevant book, and he was like, oh man, this is easy, I get this, sweet. And because it was relevant, because he needed it for work, he learned it, and he learned it quickly. So don't stress if your kid is not learning all the things, as long as they have had a taste for it. Like Erin was talking about, keeping things broad, and they know how to learn, then they're going to be okay. It really is okay. The other thing that, when homeschooling in the teen years, is connect with your kids, check in with your teenagers all the time. I have set year-long goals with my kids, and it was a teaching process to teach them how to do goal setting. They couldn't when we first started. A year was such a long way away. But I'm like, set yourself some lofty goals. Why not? My 14-year-old has a YouTube channel. He set himself a lofty goal of getting 100 subscribers. I'm like, okay. And then we broke it down. How are you going to do that? So we talked about posting on YouTube and all these things. He does slow motion, stop motion videos. And he actually surpassed his goals, and he's got a couple hundred now. And but it was one of those things. So these are all things you can do with your teens. These are all things that you can do with the non-academic stuff. So much more we could talk about. Has that triggered anything else off for anybody? No? Shall we say goodnight and goodbye and thank you? This has been amazing. It's been so full on, but it has been an amazing 3 nights. I could not have done it without any one of these ladies. They have all put, and I mean hours, into doing these presentations. I know it's only an hour long, but you put so much work into doing them behind the scenes. So thank you to each and every one of you guys. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being a part of it. And
thank you, Krystel.
No worries. It snowballed, but it snowballed in an amazing way. So I imagine we'll be back. There has been discussions already about what has been back. And guys who are watching on replay or live, let us know if there's stuff. If you want us to do this again, tell us. Let us know. Chat to us. You can chat on the Facebook. You can find us personally. Our details are up. I'll actually put them in the comments of this video. I'll make sure everyone has information on this on YouTube, because it will be up. So yeah.
And then I'd like to add something extra, actually, Krystel. If you're looking at curriculum and resources, Krystel owns Engaging Minds. So doesn't sell everything, but she sells a lot. So head over to Engaging Minds. It's a lot cheaper than ordering it from America yourself or from somewhere else. If you want to know about GED and SATs, go check out Line Feather Learning. Also, if you're new, to New Zealand from South Africa, Shirley Erwee is your person to talk to about how to change over your sort of what should you still be, I don't know what the questions are, but there will be some. So I know that they crop up, and then she is who I send people to. Tutoring, anything else for the study nook? Go check out Danny. Is there anything else that I'm missing? It's tutoring, isn't it?
Structured literacy is the main thing. Yep. So supporting dyslexia, students with additional learning needs.
Yes, very much. Dyslexia, if you listen to Danny's talk last night, and learning needs, then she's a really good go-to for that. If you want to know all the ins and outs of Cambridge questions, Nikki's the admin for a Facebook page. I would advise, there's been so many. Check what questions have been asked, because there's been so many. You can read you can read the answers, so that I think Nikki's great, but also she sometimes does repeat herself a lot. because people ask the same question all the time, not in a bad way for Nikki, but just sometimes we can save her a bit of work there by on any Facebook page, I would say. Somebody probably has already asked that question. And then if you want your kids to do online classes and they're kind of in the age group of, I run one class per term for primary school, sort of 8 to 11. But if they're 11 plus, 11 to 14, then check out Parkinson online classes. So there we go, little plug.
You're awesome, Erin. You're awesome. All right, everybody. Good night.